Hey, it's great to see you. CEO of a company called Modal. We build AI infrastructure. Serverless inference is one of the many things we offer. We power some really cool customers like Suno, Lovable, and many others, doing things like inference, training, code sandboxes, and a lot of other stuff. So let's walk through what Modal does and how it works. We're based in New York. Been doing this for about 4 years. I started the company about 2021. Modal is an infrastructure platform that makes it easy for developers to build and scale AI applications. So when you're building these AI applications, you need infrastructure. So you need a place to run all these applications, right? And as it turns out, when you're building these things, working with large-scale models, working with GPUs, a lot of existing infrastructure doesn't really cut it. So you're trying to deploy things using Kubernetes, EC2, Docker. It's kind of a nightmare. And it really drains developer productivity. And then you have a lot of these challenges around not managing predictable demand. In particular with inference, you need to be able to scale up and down very, very fast and manage their utilizations. And GPUs are expensive. And GPU capacity is limited. So you have all these issues around infrastructure management. And that's what Modal solves. So we run tens of thousands of GPUs all over the world. We manage that for you. We're a big customer of AWS. Very happy with that. And we basically started a company with this sort of thesis that today's infrastructure is just not cut for AI applications. And in particular, when you go deep on it, you look at Kubernetes in the past, and sorry to pick on Kubernetes, but it's a lot of traditional infrastructure as a whole. It's built for kind of a different era of compute. It's built for sort of a CRUD, like kind of a steady demand, CPU-based applications. It's pretty cheap. But then you go to AI land, and now you're running very expensive GPUs, and it poses a lot of challenges for how we deploy and scale applications. And so some of those applications is just a high cost. Some of them is scaling and working with these large models. Some of them are kind of new things, like how do you programmatically execute code that you don't trust necessarily? It may be code that comes from an LLM. So you need sandbox primitives. And then, of course, there's training. How do you do all of the storage of all of this underneath? Big batch jobs, all these things. So we basically built our own stack. So we started at the ground level. We built our own container runtime. We built our own file system. And then we built a bunch of storage primitives. And the reason we did that was that enables us to have this amazing developer experience that lets us iterate extremely fast and build this really offer like an amazing developer experience. You're trying to find something that sparks joy. When you're working with Modal, and I'll show you some code in a second, you can take code from your laptop and run it in the cloud in less than a second on GPUs, state-of-the-art, B200s. And what's cool about Modal is we power so many different use cases and so many different parts of the sort of AI journey, right? Like we focus on machine learning developers primarily, but we do inference, training. We even have notebooks, so you can do batch jobs. You can run code execution. We're building many more things. So Modal, sort of an end-to-end platform for a lot of different things AI. We have a lot of different customers. Some may be recognizable. Maybe you heard of Meta. But we also have some really cool sort of new AI companies. I mentioned Lovable. They're using us for all the code execution. We have some companies like Cognition and Decagon using us for LLMs. Suno, AI-generated music. They run all their inference on Modal. So we run at some pretty large scale. And it's all over the place. We're also actually doing a lot of biotech, too. So we have a lot of customers using us for scanning millions of compounds and doing advanced protein folding on GPU or sequence alignment and things like that. We have people using us for weather forecasting. We have people using us for curing cancer. We have people using us for audio transcriptions, text-to-speech, speech-to-text, and a lot of applications in audio. But really sort of any modality. LM, of course, is a cornerstone, too, modern AI. And how does it work? So we're not an AI API. We don't have necessarily a set of models. You can run any model on Modal. Some people run their own proprietary models. Some people deploy an open source model. So it's not like you're limited to a set of models. You can really run anything here. We take any code. We take your code, we take a container, and we make it run on Modal. And we manage all the scaling. And so the general way people do this is to write a little bit of Python that basically takes functions and turn them into serverless functions. So you can think of Modal, here's a quote from, and I actually think this is a really cool example. It's a robotics example. So they obviously have like very low latency demand. Like we're basically using Modal to control a robotic arm. Incredibly cool application. And so one way to think about Modal is that it's two parts. One is a Python SDK, where you can write a little bit of code that defines the functions you want to run and scale in the cloud. And underneath, we're the infrastructure substrate that basically scales that, manages all the capacity, so you don't have to think about scaling. If you need 1,000 GPUs, we can give you 1,000 GPUs within sometimes seconds. So we have these crazy large scale, very bursty jobs, sometimes big batch jobs or inference, very unpredictable inference. We can scale up and down extremely well. So let's talk about the first step. Let's talk about the Python SDK. Here's a little bit of an example, and hopefully you're familiar with Python and how it works. Here's an example of like how you can deploy a function in Modal. You start with like a little bit of Python. You add a decorator. You import Modal, of course, first. The key thing is really here. You put this decorator on any function. That turns this function into a serverless function that runs in Modal. We run a lot of stuff on AWS, but also other clouds, many neo clouds and the big hyperscalers. And in particular here, as you can see, we run this on an L40S, which is one of NVIDIA's latest GPUs. Very good for inference, especially for smaller models. And then we load the model, just using Hugging Face, transformers, and that's it. Zero infrastructure needed. When you get started with Modal, you just write a little bit of code. You run Modal run or Modal deploy. That turns it into an app. It runs in the cloud, and that's it. Underneath, well, here's the one kind of beauty of this. Put in the words of one of our favorite customers, Suno. So they run, as I said, music, AI-generated music in the cloud. And what they love is like, they're a small team. They can focus on what they're really, really good at, which is to build models and build consumer applications. And we take care of all the infrastructure underneath. With a few lines of Python, they get all of this done. And it's all in code. Zero YAML, zero configuration. No one likes to write YAML or Docker files, actually. So you write like a few lines of Python, and it just, we can also take an existing container and just move it into Modal. But the main way people use Modal is just through the Python SDK. And underneath, how does it work? So we built our own container runtime. We built our own file system. We built our own container image builder. We built our own orchestrator. Built our own scheduler. All of this stuff, right? Like we make it, the cloud development just work, which is a very hard problem. And hats off to AWS for doing something similar. Like they built EC2 and all these things. And we use some of those. But these are very hard engineering problems. And we built this underlying infrastructure stack because we felt like the infrastructure for AI just wasn't there. So some of the cool stuff we can do is we can snapshot CPU memory. We can also snapshot GPU memory. We can restore that. So we have incredibly fast container cold start. We can start GPU models and start running inference calls in less than a second, even with large models, like tens of gigabytes. And part of that is like all the deep investments we made in the infrastructure below. And we also manage all the scale. So like I said, we manage tens of thousands of GPUs all over the world. A lot of them in AWS. It's all usage-based. So you only pay for the time the code is actually running, which is very nice with inference because you have very unpredictable demand. And especially with inference, when you're scaling up and down, you don't want to go out and make a reservation of like kind of a rectangle. Like you want to just pay for what you're using. Maybe your app goes viral and you need 1,000 GPUs tomorrow. Maybe while you were sleeping. We handle that. We scale it up and manage that scale for you. And when there's no traffic, we scale down to 0, and it costs you nothing. And you can also deploy CPU functions. And so this is a lot of the work underneath. As you can see, we're on a lot of different AWS regions. This is just one example of A10Gs, how we manage that. This is a lot of under the hood. But the point is like, we take care of all of that complexity for you. You don't have to think about it. Under the hood, all this complexity about like getting GPU capacity and managing that and scaling up and down, don't think about it. We got it. And we also have a very fancy internal observability dashboard. You can see, this is one screenshot, but you can see latencies, and you can see GPU temperature and number of containers. And this is something a lot of our developers really like, the machine learning engineers. They love seeing and having full control, taking stack traces, looking at the logs, and really understanding what are my GPUs doing at any point in time. How do I maximize? So when you deploy to Modal, you can just log into your dashboard and see all these things for all your apps that are running and see exactly how much you're paying at any point in time. And part of how we think about the future is we take all this demand and just manage all that complexity for you. And by doing that, we can run it way more efficiently than anyone else can do. Because traditionally, at least in the last few years, the only way to get GPU access has been to go make reservations. I don't think that makes sense, because then everyone has to make a reservation for the peak. But by taking all that work, all these workloads, and combining them, we can manage that utilization way more efficiently. So a lot of people actually, even though our dollar per GPU hour, sometimes it's higher, but the net cost might actually be lower moving to Modal, because you're only paying when the GPUs are actually running. And we can do that because we invested a lot in driving GPU efficiently, GPU utilization, because we have this multi-tenancy. And yeah, so you see some amazing developer love. I really think that the developer experience is what sets Modal apart. People really comment on, like, you can just write a few lines of code, get it out in production, you don't have to worry. So it's really time to market that I think people come to us initially for. They want to have their very complex models, maybe they're training or doing fine-tuning. They want to scale up big batch jobs or run code sandboxes. And all you have to do is pip install Modal and get started. And people really love this developer experience. The one thing, if you talk to our customers, we just handle all of that underneath, all the infrastructure, and you just have to write like a few lines of Python. Here's another example. We help Substacks scale out to hundreds of GPUs, like big batch jobs. We have many other customers that scale out to thousands of GPUs. We had a customer the other day who processed 3,000 years of audio in a few days, doing some advanced, I don't know what they're doing actually. But it's very cool. And the love is there. We've been building this for about 4 years. We're obsessed with building products that developers really love. I'm a developer. I've been writing code for 32 years, I believe, something like that. Professionally for 25 years. We really think about how do we make engineers productive, and how do we take away the sort of boring parts of their job, and which in many cases is the infrastructure and the configuration. We love infrastructure, so I like building this stuff. So we take the boring stuff away from you, and we build all the infrastructure for you, so you don't have to think about it, especially with these AI applications. They're pretty hard to manage. Our typical customers tends to be machine learning engineers. It tends to be people who are building models or fine-tuning, building quite advanced things, and they really love that they get this like full control. We're not trying to take away the power and the control from customers. In fact, we're actually enabling them to move faster and deploy more complex things and get the power of the scalability in the cloud, and get even more GPUs than they previously had. So it's really about making engineers move faster and scale up at large scale. And a lot of what people do is really like, again, we're not an AI API. We don't have a set of models. You can run any code on Modal. Whatever code you have, if it's a proprietary model, in the case of Suno, or if it's an open source model, you can deploy it. We can help you with that. We have a lot of templates and a lot of examples for how to get started. And like I said, it's consumption based. So you only pay for the time the GPUs are actually running, which is a really nice feature, because it means with these unpredictable scaling demands that you often have doing an inference, you don't have to pay for the sort of periods in between when the GPUs are sitting idle, because we can run other workloads on those. So how do you get started? If you want to check it out, it's very easy. Go to your terminal, do pip install Modal. You can start writing code and running it in the cloud immediately. Every user gets $30 a month of free credits. And if you're a startup, you can actually get up to $50,000 worth of credits, which goes a pretty long way. So we have many startups who initially started at Modal, many Y Combinator companies, et cetera, started scaling at Modal, or doing the prototypes initially with Modal, and now they're running at very large scale in production. So we're there for you when you're building the prototypes. We help you with the developer experience. We help you move fast. We also help you scale it up and run it on thousands of GPUs when you're ready to put some production workloads. So thanks a lot. And if you want to reach out to me, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm Bernhardsson. You can check out my blog, which is, sadly, I don't blog as much as I should these days, but I used to. Or you can email me. I'm Eric with a K at Modal, modal.com. So we'd love to stay in touch. Any questions or any thoughts? I don't know if we have time for questions. Thank you.